Hey, what is going on everyone? Mekkah here and welcome back to the biggest tier lists ever made, probably, on Fire Emblem characters anyway. So we're a long way in and we still got a long ways to go, and today we're going to go over the second part of last month's batch, and this one includes characters from Fire Emblem 7, the Blazing Blade, a character from Fire Emblem 8, the Sacred Stones, some Fire Emblem 9 characters, Path of Radiance, Radiant Dawn got in here, got some Shadow Dragon, and I think we have a minor amount of Fire Emblem New Mystery, but not a whole lot of it. Yeah, we literally got 2 characters, so let's go. Disclaimer, I haven't updated the list since last time. I haven't really done any revisions since last time because I haven't uploaded the last part yet ever since I'm recording this, but I felt like getting ahead of schedule, so here we go. Let me just go over these characters and who submitted them to thank them, because these were submitted by my Patreons. My Patreons decide who goes next. I'm eventually going to tier everyone, but if you want to get ahead of the pack and submit your favorite character, then you can support me on Patreon, but only if you can afford it. Thank you very much. So, Samer206 submitted Florina from Blazing Blade. We got Marcus in here from P. Vladias. Mu submitted Raven and Athos. The Kiras has the questionable honor of submitting the only FE8 character in France. Inazama Frost submitted Oscar. Beauty Incarnate submitted Mordecai. Autistic Biden got me Lucia. Alexis almost forgot that Redding existed, so she submitted him. Nyla was submitted by Pipler. Voluga was submitted by Lazy Bison. Beauty Incarnate also submitted Kurth Naga. Then Meg got in here by Patreon Potato. Boots42 submitted Fiona and Aaron. Astrom and Samson were submitted by Arkholt, so we got a little hero duo going on here. Of course, we can't have Astrom without Medea, and that's why God probably submitted Medea, I don't know. Leo submitted Roger. T-Class 45 submitted Lena. All these from Shadow Dragon, by the way. But here we have some characters from New Mystery. We got Leiden and Aaron. Last time I kind of forgot to talk about Shadow Dragon Aaron, even though I probably should have. Or not Shadow Dragon, FE3 Book 1 Aaron, where he's way different than Book 2. So I guess I'm going to talk a little bit about him before I forget. Let me see if I can find him. I edited in a little bit, but it was a little clumsily done. So I remember him, I put him like pretty high for a character that's like pretty terrible in one of the games that he's in. And I don't have a second FE3 sprite, so I should probably find him. Here he is, bottom of A tier. Bottom of A minus to E tier, in fact. So I'm gonna move him down quite a bit, because really, like, I think he could reasonably be argued A minus for FE3 Book 2, but for FE3 Book 1, obviously you get him in that village. You choose between him and Astrom, and obviously it's going to be much worse. I looked up his bases, they were pretty trash for that point in the game. Probably still viable at some point, because I mean, you can at least use Silver Lances and hit stuff, but literally everyone can use Silver Lances at this point. They're very low weapon level in FE3, and they're buyable, so like everyone can do it. Like, your entire army is probably armed with him, and his bases are just very trash for the time he joins. So I'm gonna move him like way down. I think like if we average his Book 1 and Book 2 performance, you probably get like a C or B tier, I think. It's weird with these averages characters. I'm just gonna put him like the bottom of C, I think. I don't even think he's that great in FE3 Book 2. Like, he's alright. Like I said, it's pretty hard to tier. I'll probably have some feedback on him by the time I release this video. So it's gonna look a little weird. But for now, I'll put him like the bottom of C for now. That seems fair. I mean, that would mean he's like an E tier unit. Maybe he should be like, I don't think he should be a B minus after that Book 1 performance. Alright, we'll see how it goes. Anyway, for now, let's get into the actual characters that were submitted. So let's get into Florina. I've said this before on many FE7 characters that join in Limb mode. They're vastly different depending on whether you play Limb mode or not. And I want to take both into account because I think they're both viable ways to play the game. If you play Limb mode, you have to go through the boring tutorial, but you do get stronger characters, which is fair. And it is the whole game, and a lot of people like to play the whole game and judge characters based on that. She will have access to an energy ring and an angelic rope that she's the best candidate for. Not saying she should always get them, but she's the best candidate, and I think that helps her more than it hurts her performance. And she can get some levels as well. If she joins in Hector mode only, she's like level 3 with pretty garbage stats, particularly like HP, strength, defense are all going to be and her speed will be good and her luck will be good, but that's really about it. And it's just some attack speed issues as well, because every like Iron Lance is way her down to the point where she might not be able to double. So that hurts. Whereas if you play her on Limb mode and you raise her up and you might use the robe and the ring on her, then she becomes a lot stronger. So in that case, I think Florina is like reasonably like S tier, maybe A plus tier with like Lin mode in there. I actually talked about this with Donna yesterday, but I forgot exactly where he would put her. But it's funny, we were talking about like how weird FE7 tiering is generally. But I think like S- at the very least for Lin mode Florina. And then Hector mode Florina is more like A+, A-, maybe. The garbage bases are bad, but the flyer utility is still really, really useful. Just rescue drop, like the chapter she joins where he just rescue drops Marcus over the cliff alone, saves you like a gazillion turns. And if you're just playing casually, just having this rescue drop, this super flexible rescue drop around is super nice. So I think at the very least we should put her in A+. On average, I think that's a reasonable average between what we've established here. Let's see, there's no flyers here because like most of the flyers are around here, so it's hard to compare. I just really made everything look weird. So it's kind of hard to find like a proper spot for her to be in. I do think she's better than staying on loan for sure, even on average. So she should be somewhere between here and here, I feel like. So it's just a matter of where exactly does she go. Let me think. I think she's better than most of these characters, but maybe not. I think Dagdar and Finn have a little bit too much of self-sustainability, basically. Florina requires some more investment, and she's still useful, but I'm going to take like the semi-Jagan characters over Florina, I think, overall. Next, we have Marcus. Pretty unavoidable after we tiered out of the FE6 version of him last time. Marcus in FE7 is ridiculously good. I like to think of him as someone between Seth and Titania, or not Seth, but Titania like above him, I think. Maybe on par with Titania, and then right below him you get like units like FE6 Marcus that are like good, but they kind of fall off. Because Marcus is a little bit in between. He is ridiculously good, but he does have speed issues in the late part of the game. Like the mid-late part of the game is when he kind of stops doubling sometimes, depending on whether enemies weigh themselves down or not. But otherwise, other than that, he one-rounds pretty much everything. And he has 8 move, and he has A axis, B axis, A lances, A swords. So access to both javelins and the hand axes. And really good defense, really good resistance as well to take on mages. A lot of like low-level characters struggle with mages early on. Marcus is like, alright, I'm going to take like 1 damage, good luck. Super mobile, obviously way better than your other characters when he joins early on because he's a pre-promote. Like, you just can't stop Marcus as an enemy. Even if he's carrying someone, having his skill and speed, he's still much better than everyone else. And there's no way this guy is anything but S+ tier. He is like 1 or 2 tiers above pretty much everyone else in FE7. 11 base speed, it does sound kind of shaky. But if he just gets like 1 speed proc, he doubles like 15 extra enemies per chapter or something sometimes. You kind of gotta get lucky with those sometimes, but the amount of times that you use Marcus if you want to play optimally is so high that he'll probably get a level up. I know a lot of people are like really against this. I actually saw someone arguing on GameFAQs the other day that Marcus was actually worse than Lin, which was quite funny. It was quite good. So I'm gonna move him like to the S+ tier, and then we'll see where exactly he fits in with them. Like I said, I think he's below Seth. Seth dominance for the whole game kind of surpasses him. I don't think he's up here. He did end up in my top 15 last time I made this tier list. And last time I had him above Sita, which I think is fair. So I think there's actually a good spot here between Titania and Sita. I think that is fair. Obviously just confirming my own biases here, but I think this works out. Then next up we have Raven, still doing some Blazing Blade characters, and Raven is a weird case where I think everything besides his class are super good. It's kind of like the opposite of Cecilia, where it's like everything but her stats are good. Yeah, Raven has like really good stats, and then he's just kind of locked into a shitty class for his tier 1 at least. And he has no mount, but other than that he has no real flaws. Got the best combination of strength and speed in the game, at least when it comes to bases, and then he's got good growth as well. So he just 1 rounds off the bat, and I can't really think of many other characters that can do something like that. At least not in FE7. It's like Marcus, and then, I mean, I guess pre-promotes that join later, like Hawkeye with like a Brave Axe, or Harkin, for example, can do that. I guess Phaida can do it, because at that point the enemies are just so weak that she can kill everything. But I can't really think of any like unpromoted characters, for example, that do what Raven does. Like even in the entire series, it's like Deke and Garrick, I guess, kind of do it. Cormag against some weak monsters. It's hard to think of characters that are stronger than Raven at just murdering enemies straight off the bat. Even with like a steel sword or an iron blade, doesn't even need like a killing edge most of the time. It's really insane how strong he is. He doesn't really have any drawbacks with stats either. Like he has low res, but so does like every physical enemy or physical character. You can kind of patch it up with pure water when you really need to. He has low luck, but Tactician Affinity kind of takes care of that. Like the Tactician Stars stop him from getting crit by just about everything besides like Mercenaries and Thunder Mages. God, he's so powerful. But he does only have swords until promotion. And with Raven, you kind of face a weird dilemma in FE7. You can either get into level 10 and promote him ASAP. I know a lot of people hate that idea because it kind of ruins his growth, but hear me out here. That gets him axes very early on, and it will let him counter with hand axes, and that's pretty good, as well as a pretty good stat boost, some boosts to his bulk, and just having weapon triangle over lances is super nice. Other than that, you could wait the latest promotion, then you don't get access to those tools as early as you might want them, but you do get a stronger Raven long term that can like one round some more stuff. Might be able to one round like Valkyries later on if they have like 21 speed. Because Raven can reach like 25 speed at that point if you raise him long enough. So it kind of depends. And yes, this is all with hard mode bonuses factored in. Normal mode Raven is still strong, relatively speaking, because the enemies get weaker as well. So it doesn't change much for his performance personally. This is all with hard mode bonuses factored in, though. This is all in Hector hard mode. So I think he's like an A or a B tier character. I know it sounds very weird and biased towards units without mounts to put him like not in like an S tier or something, but Raven misses out on some early game utility, and he doesn't have a mount, and he's locked to swords for a significant portion of time depending on where you promote him. So I think all those are fair enough flaws to rate him a little lower, but I will say his combat is some of the best in the series, if not the best in the game. I think A- is fair for him. I would say he's better than F-Frame, for example, overall, who's at the top of B+ tier. I would also say he's better than Setgar, Deke, Alex. Yeah, definitely better than those. Definitely better than Garrick. It's like a slightly less bulky but stronger version of Garrick that joined earlier. So I think he's as good as Cormac, but then again, Cormac has F-Frame routes. He's more available than Dean. Dean is better when he's around, though. Better than Lack, as doesn't do, is questionable because of the utility. Better than 3 houses units is questionable too. Worse than Sally is actually kind of questionable, so maybe he should be an A+. I'm feeling A- for him though. It's kind of like a gut feeling, but I still feel like he's better than A-. I think he's worse than Fiora's questionable because his combat is so much better, but his utility is so much worse. I do think they have like good arguments against each other, honestly. But damn, Fiora has real combat issues compared to Raven, whereas Raven has real mobility issues. There's no other FE7. Oh, there's Heath, I guess. Maybe Heath is too low, actually. I think Heath should rise in favor of... I think Heath actually needs to be better than Fiora. I think he's better overall. I kind of changed my mind on that one. And then I think Raven should be... I think Shannon is like a reasonable comparison. They're both like unmounted units that are both like really good at combat. It's just they're unmounted. So I'm liking him around here, around this level somewhere. I think I'm gonna put him like next to Barst. I think Nana's better. Yeah, that works. I'm satisfied with that one. Surprisingly satisfied. Alright, bottom of A- is this. Then we have Athos. One of those super difficult characters here because there's just no availability. It's all down to how much do you value one chapter of godly utility. Of course, most people I think use Athos with the Luna Tome. If you give him a body ring, he doesn't lose speed from it anymore, or not as much anymore, that he starts doubling some final chapter enemies. It's like the same as giving him a speed wings, but you get a body ring like a couple chapters before, so it's pretty convenient to give him that one. And with that, he does like 30 damage times 2 to a bunch of enemies with high critical rate. So if he crits, the enemies is dead, even if it's like one of those light level bosses that are super strong. If he doesn't crit, they're so weak anyone else can kill them. So really good. He can also use like literally everything else. I don't really find much of a reason to use other tomes with Athos, unless I just don't have access to Luna. But you might be finding it useful to give him a Berserk Staff to Berserk one of the Reed brothers, for example, to have them murder each other, which is pretty cruel. Sometimes I have him like heal stuff or warp, but that doesn't really happen very often. Generally, I am warping Athos around rather than the other way around. So I'm trying to see, like I have Gifka here, who's only around for the final chapter of Radiant Dawn. I think Athos' contributions are significantly more than Gifka's because he has less competition. Athos is just relatively stronger compared to his peers and has more of an impact. Radiant Dawn endgame is a bit longer than FE7's, but Athos is still significant. Athos is also like really good against the final boss, but so is Gifka, so that doesn't really matter. Also, this is FE9 Gifka, I just realized. I'm trying to find like others. I don't think I have many other royals in this list. I guess Tabarn is here, but he has like a lot of other utility. He's getting like B tier. I don't see anyone else. I mean, I think he's significantly better than Gifka. I don't see anyone else with like a single chapter of utility. I know I put Noma way down there for like low utility and low availability, but that doesn't help us very much. I am feeling like C tier somewhere for Athos is fair. Like right in the middle. Never weighs you down, but doesn't really do very much when you consider the game as a whole. If I was not considering availability, then I would put him at the top. Like he would be in like S+, but I am. Because I think rewarding availability is an important thing in the tier list. If you don't reward availability, then you're cutting out a very significant portion of what makes a unit good. So I'll put Athos top of C tier. I think around Geronio's level is fair because you have like Geronio is also really good, but only for a limited amount of time. So I think it's fair to put him like at around Geronio's level. So we'll put him around here. I don't see any other FE7 units that he's in the same tier of right now. Not as far as I can see anyway. So that's okay. Wrath, I guess. He's below Wrath right now. That's fair because Wrath is useful for a longer amount of time. So that's fair. Alright, next up we have Sacred Stones. One giant character, one grand character to be tiered, and that is Franz. And I recently did him for the Cavalier tier list, the third Cavalier, Overlooked Cavalier kind of tier list. Franz, I think, is one of the best growth units in the series. It's pretty hard to find a weakness in him that isn't present in like a lot of other units as well. It's like the most basic unit possible as a Cavalier. It just joins at a low level with decent speed and strength growth. The best class in the game aside from like the flying ones, and access to 2 weapon types in swords and lances. Is just, I can't think of any single person who thinks Franz is like a bad unit. I've seen some people say, this guy wasn't that good for me, like my Kyle or my Ford turned out better. Other than that, he's just a good unit. It's just nothing against him. And it did look weird to put him up in S tier all the way last time, and of course this time I have an S plus and S minus. I do feel that Franz is an S minus. I do think people like Seth, Marcus, Titania, Har, like all these people in S tier right here are better than him. The question is where he fits in S minus. I have the Jills right here chilling, and Vanessa. I think you could argue he's on par with Vanessa. Vanessa's the flyer utility, so she's much better later, but early game, Franz holds an advantage over her in pure combat. Just having weapon triangle instead of weapon triangle disadvantage is a pretty big advantage, and he has more bulk as well. But I would say like around the mid to late game, Vanessa surpasses him. So it's fitting for him to be in the same tier, I think. Although I think overall Vanessa still edges out overall as a unit. I think I'm not super comfortable with having him over Xander either, personally. Like there's like a bunch of paladins here, come to think. We have like Xander and Percival and Oifi, Leaf and everything. I do want him to be above Radiant Dawn Ike, that's one I know for sure. And above Claude seems good. Above Leaf I'm not so sure about, so I'm going to put him like between Leaf and Claude for now. Kind of happy with that. I wish there was more to say about Franz. He's one of my personal favorites. Not that his personality is like super exciting or anything, but he just wants to do well. He just wants to be a good guy. He just wants to, you know, help out. He just wants to help Philia and Renee help out. Wants to be he's a good boy. Franz is a good boy, unlike Ford. Fuck Ford. Next is Oscar from Path of Radiance. Kind of like Franz, honestly. They just give you a Cavalier with almost no drawbacks early on. They're like, alright, you can have this, here you go. A couple things that are different about Oscar. Of course, he can't use swords, so early game he's locked to lances, but I've never found this a big problem in Path of Radiance. His accuracy against axe users is fine, and there are plenty of non-axe enemies in the early game of FE9. There are some pirate chapters and some bandit chapters, of course, but generally he's okay, and his accuracy is fine. Of course, he's not going to dodge a whole lot, but that changes soon once he gets those earth supports going. I think almost everyone in Path of Radiance at one point or another has abused the earth supports between Ike and Oscar and Kieran, and I think one of them supports Tanith as well, who also is an earth. I don't remember if it's Kieran or Oscar. It doesn't really matter. The point is Oscar super durable thanks to that dodging and pretty good natural bulk. I just don't get what they were thinking with FE9 Paladins. They're like, alright, we have the best class from the GBA series. What do we change about them? Well, how about we take away their weapon type before, we take away one weapon type before promotion. Alright, that seems good. Now, when they promote the Paladin, do I just, give them one more weapon type? How about we let them choose whatever the fuck they want? And then we'll give them an item that gives them +2 defense and res, that boosts their speed growth, the best stat in the game, by 30%, and only Knight class people can use it, and we'll call it the Knight Ward, and we'll pretend that it's there to buff Armor Knights and Nephany, and everyone's like, yeah, that's good. Oh, and Death Dawn, it also helps Death Dawn, I guess. So I think Oscar's another easy S tier that we can put up in here. I do think he's like definitely a tier above Kieran. The availability alone like steals it for me. I do think Jill is better. FE9 Jill is better. Dancer Laura I think is better. Tina is like iffy. Definitely better than Byleth and Jake. And yeah, I'm comfortable having him around here. It seems kind of weird to put him above Franz, come to think of it. It's a little weird, but intuitively it feels alright. I'm not entirely sure about it, but intuitively it feels right. We'll roll with it for now. I mean, Oscar's such a happy face. You can't deny him a high placing on the tier list. You just can't. It's just not nice. Then we have Mordecai in game, and I think my favorite part of Mordecai is definitely Smite. I enjoy Shove and Smite a lot in Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn. It's one of my favorite mechanics that I wish came back in the form that it is in Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn. Later games, sometimes they have Shove in there, but it just doesn't look as fun. There's something like super cool, funny about the violent animation where you just shove someone into some place. And in combination with the other like heroes like skills like reposition and swap and stuff, I just like Shove as its own mechanic basically, even though it's kind of the same thing as reposition and swap and all these other reposition skills that I'm forgetting about at the moment. Of course, Mordecai is much more than that. He is one of the first Lagoos we have seen in the series, along with Leth. And he starts out untransformed, unlike Leth, so he has a bit of a slower start. But once he transforms, he just eats everything alive that you see. He's very, very strong. I don't really like Path of Radiance's Lagoo's mechanics for the most part, because there's no Lagoo's Olivia Grass to speed it up. So you just kind of sit there and hope that he transforms until you get the Demi-Band. And when you get the Demi-Band, you get half your transformation bonuses, which is usually enough to do fine. But I find that Mordecai is pretty inconsistent at doubling when he uses it. And even without it, he has some doubling issues sometimes. Depends on the difficulty level. I have a bit of a distorted view of Path of Radiance's difficulty level because I co-hosted a Let's Play of Maniac mode, and just recently I did a speedrun race, draft race on normal mode. So the difficulty I want to rate units on, the English version, hard mode is not one I've played or seen in a while, so I might be off on the thresholds, but from what I can tell, Mordecai doubles okay, and it becomes less and less as the game goes on, as enemies increase in speed by quite a bit, but not too much. He might sometimes still double when transformed normally, but I do feel like most of the time you just want the Demi-Band. Something else I noticed about Mordecai, I drafted Jill in that draft race. Mordecai cannot draft Shove Jill or Smite Jill, but he can smite Marcia, which helps a lot in Marcia's case. Thank God though, Mordecai is like super heavy, so he can smite anyone, which is super cool. It's the reason why I want to give Smite to Moram as well, because he also has a lot of weight to him. And that is definitely a big part of the utility. I think there's a Smite scroll somewhere, but him not needing it is nice. Having a double Smite is super nice for reaching certain thresholds. I just really enjoy that mechanic. Lagoo's mechanics I'm less happy about, but I enjoy his high stats, and I enjoy his durability as well. He's very bulky. I don't know how I managed to get him killed on normal mode, but that aside, really good HP, really good strength, and really good defense. Just locked to one range. Kind of sucks having only one weapon type to work with, like not being able to switch to something else when you're like not strong enough or need more range is kind of a bummer. So that kind of hurts him. So I can't put him too high. I would say he's like a mid to high tier unit. Like the utility that he has is good. I would not recommend like training Mordecai, like feeding him XP over and over. Obviously, it doesn't really make you very good use of it. His growths are good actually. I believe it's like a over 100% HP growth, which is kind of funny. But I don't think he belongs very high. I just think his utility is nice. I'm looking for some other Path of Radiance units because I don't know where exactly I want to put him. Like B- or C. I think he's too good for C, but I don't think he's good enough for B+. You got some utility units here like Cecilia, for example, and I don't see many others like that. I think Morty is like a solid B, like around this level somewhere. Seems about right. I think this is a solid spot for him. There's some utility units here as well that kind of work like that. You don't really have to train Mordecai. He's pretty good at base level for the most part, and even without any kind of stat raisings, he's gonna be good at smiting. So it seems fair to give him some good utility. I like that he's very mobile though. I forgot to mention that. Lagoos have nice movement, really good movement. I was actually able to stealth chapter 10 in normal mode using only Mordecai. I had to reset once, but I didn't even need to use like Lagoo Stone. I just had to run around and transform automatically. It was pretty cool. Then we have Lucia. This is, I'm pretty sure this is FE, so I'm gonna double check real quick. I need to make sure this is the right Lucia. I'm pretty sure this is FE10 Lucia. Yes, this is FE10 Lucia. Alright, so what we're talking about is a unit with realistically like one chapter of real utility again, and this time it's like 2-2 from the top of my head. You're in a dark cave and you have like a ragtag of units. Some of my favorites scenarios in Raining Dawn where you're just thrown in with a couple of units and you just kind of have to make do. So we have Lucia, we have Nalucci, we have Mordecai actually. We have Brahm and Nephany, we have Heather, we have Leth, and we have Leanne. I think that's about it. And she's by far the strongest one, with the strongest unconditional range, 1-2 range as well. The Lagoos are locked to 1 range, and Brahm doesn't really have any 2 range accessible, I think. Nephany might have like a weak javelin to work with, possibly. And I mean, yeah, and obviously can't fight. Heather's very weak, so Lucia having access to a wind edge is very nice. She doesn't one round with it, but she comes like pretty close to where someone else can finish off. Or she can one round things with the silver sword. That is very strong. That's her only chapter though, really, realistically. Like, until then, she doesn't come back until part 4. In the Hawk army. Like, she can only be in the Hawk army too, like no flexibility there. She's in the Hawk army, he's just gonna have to fight with her. She does like it's salvageable in Arc 4, especially in normal mode, but I wouldn't recommend using her if you want like an easy to train and good unit overall. There's not much that makes her stand out once she hit part 4. There's probably many units like her that if you have like a niche for like a Swordmaster at that point, which there are some for, then she's not really one for having, like, she doesn't really stand out compared to like Mia or Zyark, for example. I don't think many people would pick Lucia over them for the gameplay utility. I think it might have to do with something else about Lucia that they would pick her for. But in 2-2, I want to value her 2-2 utility, but of course I can only value one chapter so much, so she's gonna be like around Gifka level, probably like FE9 Gifka level. Let's get her over to C, maybe D, considering like she's also around for a while when she's bad. I can't really put her that high. Definitely below Athos. He definitely has a better one chapter utility. Don't get me wrong, Lucia's great compared to her peers, but it is a pretty short chapter, and it's not like she doesn't help trivializing it as much as Athos does. So the bottom of this tier, or like the top of the D tier, seems about right to me. Yeah, I'm gonna go for the top of D tier. Probably better than Devdon and Donvet, for example. About on par with Niluchi, seems about fine. I want to put her below Niluchi in some way, because Niluchi is around for more chapters, even though it's really only like 1 or 2 more chapters. But it is some utility that he has over here, and Niluchi himself is not bad in the Lucia chapter. So below Niluchi seems about fine. I know about Casper and Cord and friends. I'm gonna just put her here for now for the D tier. She seems alright. I would definitely recommend using her for 2-2. She's just, the rest of the game is not that good for Lucia. Then we have Renning, and speaking of characters that are only around for a really short while, he joins an endgame, and I would say the majority of Fire Emblem 10 players probably never deployed Renning in their entire life. And that includes me. I have never used Renning. I know roughly what he's capable of on theory, but I've never actually had to utilize him. I know Don has. I think he used Renning in his, I think currently not uploaded FE10 unit in his Urban Growth run. So I sort of know what he does, and I've seen him like talked about in debates and stuff and like other tier lists. So most of what I know about him is hearsay, but I know he's very bulky. I know he can use 2 types of effective weapons that are very good in endgame. The hammer, that is very good against the generals in 4E1, and the Wormslayer, which is very good against the dragons in 4E3. I don't know for sure if he one-rounds dragons in 4E3. If he does, that is fairly decent, but not great, because it really only works on player phase, and you would like to have something to counter on enemy phase. I guess you could trade with him, but then what is he going to do, like use a Tomahawk or something? That's not super good. Yeah, Hammer and Wormslayer utility is about all you can do, and other than that, he's not that great. I know he's pretty far removed from doubling auras in 4E5. I'm actually going to double check what his bases are again, because I actually forgot completely. Like, Renning is one of those units that just no one ever really uses, I think. Not that he's like super terrible, but if you're playing Radiant Dawn for like the entire game with a bunch of different units and you finally get them all together, you kind of want to just squeeze as many of them into your final roster as you can. So I don't blame anyone for not having room for Renning. Okay, so he has 29 speed at base, and I'm pretty sure that's out of reach for doubling auras with a white pool. He does have 31 strength and 56 HP, which is impressive. His bulk is 27. I think that's going to get him like 3-shot by most generals, if I remember correctly. So that's someone you can throw in like Tabarn and stuff. That's another thing. You don't only get like your normal team members, but if you want to deploy like non-initial team members in the endgame, you still have to compete with like Knigas and Gifka and, you know, units like that. And then I guess there's like Tabarn and Nyla as well that you have to compete with, in the Sala and all the royals basically, and they're super strong compared to him. They're much better, and considering that, like, sure, he has some 2-range options, but when using them, he's going to be so laughably weak compared to the royals that he still doesn't really compete with them in a way. And you also have better options that have 2-range, like Shinan, for example, is at his best in endgame, the best he's been since like 3 prologues. So having him in like putting Renning over Shinan in the endgame, for example, like endgame is super competitive unit slots wise. This is why I value Gareth so much compared to a lot of like trash units overall, is because he's just free in endgame, whereas other people, you only have 10 people to pick from, and you will almost never want Renning unless you're playing on 0% growth. So I think Renning, he's not terrible in endgame, but he's not like, it doesn't make him stand out in any way. He used to have like a million better options probably. Like I would say about roughly half the cast is probably going to be better than him. So even in endgame, he's going to be like pretty useless. So I'm going to have to put him pretty low in D. He just has too much competition. I could honestly see him in E tier. I could honestly see it. That doesn't mean like if you deploy him, you're probably going to be like pleasantly surprised by what he can do. But if you compare him to the other options, you're going to be like, maybe Sephiroth should be lower as well then. Because I feel like Renning should be above Sephiroth. Although Sephiroth is free in endgame, so that is something I want to count him. I want to give him throw him a boon for. Yeah, I'm gonna put Renning in E tier actually. I really don't think he's good enough to warrant a slot in endgame. It's such a huge opportunity cost really. So these guys have free utility, these guys not really. So I'm gonna put him around here somewhere in E tier. I don't think he's very good. Next is Nyla, and she's one of those really good units in endgame, but she is also available in part 1, and that is what makes her one of the better units in Radiant Dawn in my opinion. Not like probably not an S tier, but super high. It's again really tough to evaluate units in Radiant Dawn, especially when they're Nyla and they're like easily like S+ tier when they join. Like there's no better unit on the Hall Dawn Brigade. Even the Black Knight is worse than Nyla. In the joining chapter, she just kills like an entire side of the map, or you can bring her over to another side if you want to, because she takes no penalties from reads. She just like walks right through them and murders everything on any side of the map you put her in. Of course, you have to make sure that Raphael is safe, but that is not particularly difficult to do. You can still have Voluga, have some fun in there, get some strike rank on the bandits, and God, she's so much damage. I think she doesn't quite. I don't remember if she one-shots bandits, but I know she one-rounds them. I just remember her. I just don't know for sure how much attack she has exactly, because those brigands are like super bulky, but the point is she kills everything. And God, she's so powerful. In endgame, she has so much move, she can just like jump up ledges. I like to give her a pass, even though Nyla leaves after one endgame and you don't get pass back, but the Dawn Brigade doesn't really need pass very much in part 3, and then around part 4 you get it back, so I don't think it's a huge loss. And this makes it super easy to catch up to the thieves and like run past some of the enemies that are standing on ledges to guard them, because getting rid of enemies on ledges is particularly annoying. You kind of have to rely on the Black Knight with his ranged weapon to do it, and he might still miss sometimes. Not that it's just like, alright, I'm gonna run past this knight, for example, bonk him in the head, and then everyone else can get past him. I'm not saying she's needed to get to the thieves, but she makes endgame like much easier. And endgame is like a pretty tough chapter for the Dawn Brigade, because they're fighting against 3 leadership stars and some pretty strong enemies. I remember units like Voluga and Soth are a lot weaker in endgame than they are when they start out. It's like a huge difference. So Nyla really helps a lot in that chapter. And in part 4, she's still 2 rounds pretty much everything. I think she is close to 2-shotting some generals in 4E4, the Oliver Manson chapter. It depends. She might need a strength proc, and it might be confusing difficulties here, but at the very least, she's a pretty good chance of proccing her mastery skills into killing those. The same goes for like endgame generals. I think she has a shot at killing those, either through strength procs or through her mastery proc. I think she has like, I think it's called Howl in her case. I might be confusing the skills there. She has some kind of skill that lets her kill people, basically, because every master class has it. It's basically extra critical hit, and her proc rate is going to be very high because her stats are very high. So I think Nyla's A tier. So we're going to go there and see what we can do from there. Tabarn is somewhere around here. I want to put her like around Tabarn's level, I think, because he's in a pretty similar spot, and having them far apart would be kind of weird. I think Tabarn is better overall in part 4, but Nyla does have part 1 utility. Actually, Tabarn is in B-. Okay, never mind that. Maybe she's B- as well. Radiant Dawn availability makes everything super weird. I think the part 1 utility is good enough to have her like a tier up, and maybe 2 tiers up. I'm definitely going to put her... Yeah, this is too low, I feel like. I think Nyla's A-. I think Nyla's A-. I know she's better than Conquest Saizo. Conquest Saizo is meme power, is legendary. I think she should be above 10 at the very least. I'm gonna go with around here somewhere, I think. She does have like very far below average availability even within Radiant Dawn. Only around for 2 chapters before part 4. It's not a whole lot, but she's very good in those chapters, so I don't want to put her like too far down. 2 tiers up from Tabarn feels weird though, not gonna lie, so one of these might be wrong. Then there's Voluga, another member of the Dawn Brigade. I always find it strange that Voluga gives you a game over if he dies. I don't know why they care so much about him of all people. But, you know, he's a good dude. He says some funny things, even though they can't understand him. I think Mordecai understands him, but everyone else is like, what the fuck did you just say, little bitch? He's very strong when he joins. He's like an extra Jake, and he's one of those units that makes the whole Dawn Brigade worse by existing. Because like someone like Nolan, for example, looks very good in 1-2, but then you look at like 1-6 or something, there's like 5 units that are better than him. Is basically my point, and Voluga is one of them. Insane HP and pretty good defense when he starts out. Like I think he has like almost 50 HP. And he dodges like half the time too, so killing him is not easy for enemies. Fire Mage is a bit of a problem for him, but I think he can one-shot them on player phase, and he can definitely take at least one hit from them. I remember some of the Fire Mages, they can like add up to a lot of damage, but generally those are the only enemy types that even remotely threaten him. Everything else is like, okay, whatever dude, I'm just gonna kill you now. Joins with A rank Strike, but he can possibly get to S Strike actually. I think he might be the only Lagoos that you can feasibly get to SS Strike besides the Royals. Like I know this Hala starts with S, for example, and you can get to SS. All the other Royals just start with SS. But Voluga is around for so long that you can just reasonably have him double everything and maybe get to SS. I did it once in one playthrough, and it did increase his might a lot, but he faces another problem. I think around part 4, he doesn't double as reliably anymore. His speed has some issues. Of course, Voluga is a very low XP gain, and he just gets like 1 kill per enemy kill. Part 3, he can get some more if you want to give him like Paragon or Beast Foe. He can definitely grow very fast. Of course, you want, like, if you're training like Nolan or Jill, those are like very desperate for that kind of resources too, so it's not for free, but it's possible to do it with Voluga. I just don't think Voluga is a very good long-term investment in Radiant Dawn. I think the lock to 1 range is very detrimental in part 4 especially. A lot of enemies only have 1 range, but at the same time a lot of them also have 2 range. And if you can't counter them, it almost doesn't even matter how good your stats are. And Voluga's stats in part 4 aren't even anything special. Part 3 they're good. I usually take off half shift at that point. You can't do it in part 1. I think they want Voluga to stay disguised. But it's fine, because until endgame, half shift Voluga like ruins everything anyway. But in part 3, I think his half shifted stats just don't hold up anymore, and he needs the full transformation gauge. And I don't think you have a Lagoo Stone right away in part 3. I think you have a chance to steal a Lagoo Stone from like Mordecai or Leth if you want to with Soth. It's something you kind of have to set up in advance, but you can do it if you want to. Otherwise, he just kind of has to grass for a turn. I don't like that in Act 3. I think in Act 3 you kind of want all the player phases you can get, especially in like 3-6 and well, basically 3-12 as well. A lot of ranged enemies, and if you can't fight on player phase and you only have 1 range, then you're not going to do a whole lot in enemy phases, especially if you're also not like reliably one-rounding anything. But that depends. I don't remember if he one-rounds 3-12 enemies off the top of my head, but he definitely does one-round enemies on 2 and like attack him at 2 range, because then he just doesn't counter. Hal doesn't count. So I think he's good for most of part 1, like one of your better units. Of course, he's going to get eclipsed by the Black Knight and Nyla and stuff, but he's generally going to be one of the better ones. Act 3, he's okay. I like him in the Lagoo's chapters, because there everything is 1 range, so him not having 2 range doesn't hurt him very much. But I don't think he's as good of an investment as Jill and Nolan are, for example. Still better than Aaron, though. Act 4, I don't think he's very good. So that overall doesn't make him look very good, even though I like it. His start is very, very good. So you can use him for a bit and then just kind of ditch him. But I don't think overall he comes out very good. Like, you don't want to bring this guy to endgame, for example. He's not that good there. So it's going to be surprisingly low, even though, like, imagine you start out for a Radiant Dawn game right now, and you look at the tier list and you're like, Voluga is like C or B tier. That doesn't seem very good. And then you use him in 1-5, you're like, wow, how can this guy be like B or C tier? That makes no sense. But in the long term, he really isn't that great. He's like, I think he's better than Brighton, for example. I think he's around Zyhark's level. Okay, that seems fair. Below Geese seems very bad. I should move down Geese, honestly. I should move down Geese to D tier. He's not that good. I need to use him again, but I'm pretty sure he's not that good. His accuracy really is something to be desired. I need to move him like way the fuck down. I'll move him to like here, I think, for now. He does not look right. He needs to be down lower. I kind of overrated him. Anyway, I put Voluga around here. Above Athos, no, I don't think so. Above Turonio, possibly. He has a lot more availability in Turonio, so I can see it. Maybe Turonio's in the wrong spot. Let me see who else is here. I think there's FE10 Nephany. I'm okay with him being above her. Yeah, I'm roughly fine with this. Yeah, this is okay for now. Next we have Girth Naga, and he's another one of those late joined. Damn, all these people from the like Radiant Dawn are just not around ever. Oof, I want to like Girth a lot. I want to like him a lot. Like having a flying black dragon in the end game after that cutscene at the end of like 3E is like, oh geez, that's super good. But Girth likes peace. He doesn't like hurting people, so he has Black Tide. He gives people the best bonus, +5 defense, +5 res, when they just want to be like killing people. So that's not very good. He's free in endgame, so you don't have to like stop anyone. He can shove people there, I guess. But he's not very good at attacking. His base stats are very low. I think his particular speed is terrible, so he doesn't double anything. You can bonus experience him, or you can do like a little bit of an exploit thing / cheese. 4e3, none of the enemies attack him. You can give him like Paragon, maybe Dragon Foe, or maybe something else, and just have him attack people. He does have an insane amount of skill capacity, especially after 4e3, when he gets Form Shift. So you can give him like any skill combination you want, and he can have some fun with that. But yeah, 4e3, free experience for him and anyone, because no one counters him. You can just cheese anyone. Use Enna to boost his attack if you want. Enna doesn't get attacked either, so he's home free. If you want to grind him. If you don't want to grind him, I don't think he's very good. I think he's in a lot of trouble in that chapter. I mean, not in F4e3. 4e3 is obviously like completely free to do whatever he wants. But like 4e4 and 4e5, he just doesn't do anything. He's very, very weak at base level, and if you grind him up, he can be okay. But I think even at his speed cap, he doesn't double Auras for some reason. He's just, this guy is so bad in endgame. It's free bad units. It's a free bad unit. What do we rate a free bad unit in endgame? Because he's not around for any time before that either. I'm gonna have to like, I think he might have to go in F tier, maybe E tier. I think, like, the thing is, Renning, if you bring him, he'll do something. Okay, we'll put Kurth, like, I don't think he should be above Renning, honestly. I don't think he should be above Renning. I'm gonna put him like the bottom of E tier. No, he really doesn't do anything. The +5 defense res, what you can do with him is you can like save the life of your Herons. That's kind of cool, I guess. Okay, we'll keep him here for now because I like him. We'll keep him here for now because I like him. He's not that good though. He has some issues. Alright, so I had to AFK for longer than expected, so we're going to continue with the FE10 characters now, but if I sound different, now you know why. It's been a little bit, Mike might be in a different position, etc, etc. So, Meg is in Radiant Dawn, and the first thing I think of when I see Meg is there's like an interview with the developers of Radiant Dawn, and they are asked for their favorite characters, or the favorite character, and one of them is like, yeah, we like Meg, yeah, and they all laugh, because they know that Meg is a joke character. Pretty good one, a pretty funny one, if I may say so myself. I didn't make Meg, I don't know why I said that. Anyway, the point is, Meg is not the most serious of attempts at making a character. A lot of people call her a Pegasus Knight in an Armor Knight's body, which in a way I can see, because her growths do resemble Pegasus Knight. They're more focused on speed than anything else, which works very poorly with her low speed cap and everything. And low bases as well, like, that's the biggest issue with Meg, is just low bases. Not the most durable character around, gets 2-shot by the Lagoos in chapter 1-4, and I think she keeps getting 2-rounded throughout part 1, despite the fact that she's an Armor Knight. And she also doesn't double, and she also doesn't do very much damage, and she can only use swords. So, yeah, it's like if like someone like Edward, or Leo, or like Mekkah, or someone with that power level joins, but like a couple chapters later. It's not very good. Has a skill called Fortune that she joins with. I don't generally think skills that a character joins with are very relevant in Radiant Dawn. They can be sold off of them, and the only advantage to keeping them on a character, or like for the whole game long, is not taking up any capacity when they are there. But Fortune is not a very good skill in general. You don't get crit very much in Radiant Dawn. Someone like Har can sometimes use it for Thunder, preventing himself from getting crit and killed. But it takes up a lot of capacity. I think tier 1 units can't even equip it without promoting first, so I usually just take it off her and sell her. Or I sell Fortune, I don't sell Meg. I don't want to think about that. So I don't think anyone expects Meg to be very high. The question is she like an E tier or an F tier? I think she belongs in F tier. I also don't think Jesse belongs in F tier here. I think he's a bit more salvageable than most of these characters. So I'm gonna move him up a little bit while I'm here, and then Meg is gonna go like I don't know, where do you want her, honestly? I think below, I think Oliver is too low, honestly. I think I'm going to move him up a little bit too, because he's got some, not free, but like okay utility, compared to these girls who don't really. So I'm going to move him around a little bit like that. Gotta do the constant revision. And now that should be perfect. That should be alright. I think Meg is often brought up as like one of the worst units in Fire Emblem history. She might not be all that bad compared to some of the others, but I think she belongs in the bottom, definitely. Someone who's also brought up for the bottom a lot of the time is Fiona. Joins in 1.7. She first appears in 1.6.2, but you don't get her until like a chapter later. And Fiona's a lot of problems. Sometimes I see people bring up one of them as if they're like the big cause of her issues, but really the problem is she has all of these issues. First of all, she joins relatively late in part 1, so she's very few chapters before part 4. If you actually count them, it's like 1-7, 1-8. No wait, she's not in 1-8, it's just 1-7. Not that she'd be good in 1-8, but she's only in 1-7, 1E, so 2 chapters in part 1, and 3 chapters in part 3, so that's 5. 5 total chapters, and in none of these she's impressive without grinding. Her base stats are awful. Her class is pretty good for most games, but not in Radiant Dawn, because most of the maps that she's in, I think all of them impede her movement in some way, be it ledges or a swamp like the river in 3.6. All those just say, hey, Fiona, you actually can't move as far as your movement stats say they can. And even like 1-7 is like indoors. So yeah, an unfortunate game to be a Cavalier in for sure. There are some things that she can do that are actually nice though. She has Savior as an innate skill. I just spent like a bunch of time bashing Fortune and like personal skills or innate skills on Radiant Dawn. Savior, if you're gonna have one, I might as well be that one, right? Because it's a pretty good skill. You could do kind of like a pair up thing before Awakening was a thing, where you pair someone with her and then they get the support bonuses and they build supports pretty quickly. So say you aren't using Nolan, you can have Fiona rescue him and just hold on to him for the entirety of his career. And as long as you don't mind having Savior nowhere else, then Fiona is able to use that to her advantage and actually get a double Earth support without being near anywhere else or being near anyone else. That's a pretty good thing. And you can give Nolan Daunt if you have it somewhere. It's pretty difficult to get on the Dawn Brigade. You have to like steal it from the GMs, but it's possible, I guess. I don't think it's actually possible to do it in a near fashion, but you can do it for part 4. Get Daunt on the person you're rescuing, and then he's actually giving the Daunt bonus despite being in the saddlebags. It's kind of cute. But that implies using Fiona. That implies dealing with her horrible stats, on par with Meg's, basically, but a couple chapters later again. Particularly hitting with her is a big issue from what I know. I have never bothered training Fiona, but whenever I see someone do like a pick my units thing in Radiant Dawn, everyone always gives someone else Fiona. It's like, I don't know, it's like a rite of passage to play Radiant Dawn while using Fiona. It's like a big challenge apparently. It is one of the more fun units I think to use, or she is one of the more fun units to use once she has been raised and you actually got some good stats on her, but it takes a while. As far as I know, her strength growth isn't high enough to grow by bonus experience until she's capped some stats, so you're just gonna have to deal with her base strength and then whatever you get through luck level ups. But yeah, I think all of her stats are pretty much X. She gets one rounded by like everything as far as I know. You can train her by like glaring a priest with Nyline 1E and then just having her wail at him one turn at a time until you get enough XP. Earth support is pretty cool though, but that's pretty much all she has going for her. So I think she also is one thing I like to do with her is use her to put yellow units on ledges in 3.13. That's actually a pretty useful utility she can do without training her at all, and I think that alone is like worthy of maybe E tier. That's about it though. That's about as high as I'll go. That's about as high I'll go with Fiona. Other than that, I'm gonna put her like straight up in E tier. But I do think she's more useful than Meg, who can't really do anything without training, except shoving. Shoving is kind of nice too, I guess. Next we have Aaron from the same game. I streamed Radiant Dawn a little while back to test the ISO that I had, because I made some changes and I wanted to see if it worked. And the chat brought up Aaron and how good he is, and I really don't think Aaron is any good. I think people who call Aaron underrated often enough overrate him. I really don't think the Dawn Brigade is in demand for a tank like Aaron. Even though people say he's a tank, he's not. Not at base at least. His HP is way too low. He gets 2-shot by most Lagoos in 1-4. Every Lagoos. He gets 1 rounded by the bosses on hard mode. There's no extra big XP you can give him to like remedy that easily. And to invest into Aaron, you have to give up on units like Nolan or Jill. You only really have space to train like 2 or 3 units on hard mode in Dawn Brigade. It's so tight. Because combat XP is jack shit, you get 4 times as little bonus experience in hard mode compared to normal mode. There's just not much to go around. The Dawn Brigade are starving for EXP, and Aaron is not someone who's like a great long-term investment either. No matter how much you train him, he's not going to one-shot Lagoos in part 3, which is something that Nolan can do, something that Jill can do if you just give him Beast Foe, or be a good Paragon target, you know, they can one-round with like the Brave Axe sometimes. I think Nolan can double like untransformed cats, for instance. Aaron, I guess he can maybe do that, but he probably doesn't one round. I'll be honest, I've never tried long-term training Aaron. It's going to be next on my project list, but every projection I've seen of Aaron in part 3 is just been like sure he can choke a point or whatever, but there's not too much demand for that I find in Dawn Brigade. They have a couple tanks and they only need a couple, and he's the worst of them all. He does not have the flexibility of Jill, or the attack power of Nolan, or the avoid that Zyhark has, or he's not Volug, you know. All of these units I think are better than him, and are better investments than he is. So, and then you have like a lot of like filler units on the Dawn Brigade as well that can like do stuff better than him. You get the Black Knight, you get Nyla, you get Vika, you get Tormod, you get Moram. All these units are better than him too, I think, as long as they're both around. And when they're not around in part 3, you're better off investing in other units, I think. Now that said, he's not like E or F tier. He might not even be D tier, but I do think he belongs in E tier in the end. But I do think he's less useful than someone like Mekkah, for example, is useful by having staves. This is something you're not getting if you don't train Mekkah. Whereas Aaron, I think, doesn't give you anything that you don't already have in part 3. And Mekkah has like heavy investment. Or like Aaron is heavy investment compared to Mekkah. So I would put Aaron somewhere in D tier. I really don't think he's that good. But I can see why people like him. And in normal mode, it's like a very different story. Normal mode is like more BXP going around. I still think in normal mode, the demand for a character like Aaron is as low as it is. But at least he's more usable. I'm going to make this judgment based on hard mode. I'm trying to see if there's like any other every 10 units. There's like Dunvet in here, who I guess is a little worse. Maybe. I think at least Dunvet has like some more fury utility. Aaron can shove people, I guess. I'll put him at least above Neolucci, I guess. And I still think I'm being generous there, though. I still think I'm being generous. I really don't think he belongs that high, but you know, feel free to prove me wrong with your playthroughs or whatever, or your arguments. But for now, I'm gonna put him in D tier. I really don't think he's good. But it might be like a little too harsh, like trying to like fire back on his overratedness or whatever. But I really don't think he's very good. Next up, we have some Shadow Dragon and new mystery stuff. So we have Samson, Astrum, Medea, Roger, and Lena from Shadow Dragon, I'm pretty sure. And then we have these two from New History. So Samson is a split choice between him and Aaron, and he's the better choice by far. The hero bases alone kind of carry him. I think Aaron gets doubled at base level in Hard 5, where Samson can actually survive an enemy paladin in even in 0% growth in that one chapter, the S chapter. I think it might be 18 or so, might be 19. I remember this because I commentated Don on 0% growth playthrough, and that's one thing that stood out for me from Aaron. Good base axe rank, and he comes at around a time where you also have access to pull axes, so it's actually pretty useful at base level. It's kind of nice. Pretty cool. I don't think he's got a good long-term unit. Like someone like Barst, who you've been training since the beginning, or even if you trade like Cord or Board, will probably be slightly better at him long-term, because Shadow Dragon growths are not terrible. And, you know, at this point, you'll probably have, like, really good trained units. But for as little as investment as you would put into Samson, he seems pretty alright to me. You can't really expect anyone to solo chapters in Hard 5. His durability is not high enough to survive, like, Brave Weapons as far as I know. But on easier difficulties, you could probably use him as, like, an okay filler. And just use, like, effective weapons to come out on top. You can use Worm Slayers. He can use Hammer. All that kind of stuff. Can be useful on him. But the problem with Shadow Dragon I find is like most characters, especially promos, have very low HP. So surviving enemies, like more than one, is already generally very tough. But he can hold like a choke point for a turn, hit an enemy hard enough. Hopefully not hard enough to kill them, because then he probably dies. But he can get some stuff done if you really want him to. But overall, I would say his utility is very limited. He's like nice, but I don't think his stats are particularly spectacular. Definitely better than FE11 Aaron though. FE11 Aaron, oh my god. That guy's not very good. So I'm thinking like C or D tier for him. The amount of utility he has is kind of limited. I'm going to put him like around Largo's level. I think that is fair. FE3 Barst might need to be a bit higher, but I think around Largo's level is fine. This is about as high as I put him, I think. Just because, like, of course, he joins very late. This utility is like limited because of like he's around for like what, 5 chapters, 7 chapters maybe, not a whole lot. Then we have Astrum. Astrum is also a hero, but he joined significantly earlier. My biggest memory of Astrum is that Dana used him to kill the boss of that chapter with 11 sword crit. One of my least favorite like aspects of that kind of playthrough is that you have to rig crit sometimes, so I can't really like, count that in Astrum's favor. But if you fly someone else in that can chip that ballista boss down and then kill him with 11 sword, that would sort of work. I think I've seen Moogle boss do that on their I think it is his growth playthrough. But it's no warp, no forges, so it's a very different meta. But I think 11 sword Astrum plus someone like Dragonite Cheetah that flies in from out of range, because your ballistas have like 10 range, but Draco Knights can attack from like 11 squares away. They can just fly in and swoop in and kill everything. So that is like his potential like joining chapter utility. After that, I mean, he's fast enough not to get doubled, and I don't believe he gets O-code by anything in a hard 5. Again, someone like him joining a mid game with low HP and like okay stats. They kind of showed that this game is designed around Iron Manning. These kind of look more like a replacement. If you train someone like Ogma or Barst or someone else that's reclassed a hero, they'll probably be better. But if you didn't, or you just want a hero at base stats that can sort of work, then he gets the job done. He has like good weapon levels. I believe he has B or A in swords. Unfortunately, in Shadow Dragon, maining swords is not very good for, you know, a good formula for success. I believe like at least Samson has like an existent X rank, but I don't believe he has one. I'm gonna double check that real quick, but I don't believe it's very great for him. Yeah, so he has a D rank in axes, which is not enough for the hammer, unfortunately, which would be used for the pole axe. So unlike Samson, he doesn't really have access to effective weapons unless you invest in like an arm scroll, which is very rare, or you just train him up a lot, which is also annoying to do because you only get 2 weapon XP per combat round, even if you double or kill. So getting up weapon ranks when you don't have high ones to begin with is very difficult in this game. So I think generally you shouldn't count on this guy hitting C, but maybe by the time you get pole axes, you could theoretically do it, but it would be pretty difficult because investing in this guy, we can invest in like guys with better growths. Is probably more worth your time in Shadow Dragon. So I'm gonna put him like a little higher than Samson for availability, although Samson's combat is better, so maybe they're like around the same in the end. I'm kind of liking the idea of that. So where did I put this guy again? He's like around here. I think I like his combat better by a significant amount to put him like a little higher than Astram. I think they're around the same. He's got more availability, but he is just like, once he joins, he's just infinitely better. And there's actually some things he can do with the Axe rank that I think he can't do. But these are not the units I have the most experience with. I will say that right away. So next up is Medea, of course the person who recruits Astram. And I was not very impressed with Medea. I think I compared her bases to Jagan once and they were fairly similar, which is not a great sign. Using the Sylvanlance at base is like one of Jagan's biggest boon. But Medea, by the time she joins, it's not as important anymore. You probably have multiple units who can do it. And her base stats just leave something to be desired. But it is a promoted unit. And without a Master Seal, so that can lead to extra utility, just with Samson. You can turn it into Draco Knight. I think when I remember using Medea, the biggest problems for me were, of course, the HP that I mentioned before. That just isn't very high. I think it's like in the 20s. And that just gets 2-shot or even 1-shot by some enemies, but that's probably not just effective enemies or like really strong ones. But also just like low strength and not enough speed to double like significantly. She might double some of the slower enemies that get weighed down a lot. But generally, I don't think Medea is like a very good combat unit. You could probably use her for like shenanigans, like flying around on a Draco Knight, maybe baiting some enemies away. But you probably have multiple promoted units at this point, and anyone who's promoted in this game, a male or female, can become a Draco Knight as long as you have enough slots. So Medea would just end up taking the flyer slot from someone else. So that's why I don't really count it for very much at this point. Early on, when you only have Sita and then maybe on one other slot for a flyer, having access to Draco Knight like Wendell or Jagan is a big deal, because you don't really like, what else are you going to turn into like a flyer? You can't turn Abel into a flyer, you can't turn Harden into a flyer until they promote. And other than that, what you have is like, you don't have Norn in Hard 5, so Lena can become a Pegasus Knight. You don't want to do that, I guess. You don't want warp and healing utility. What's her name? Athena, I guess. You don't really have many other options for flyers, but by the time Medea joins, you should have like a couple. You've had like 1 Master Seal, you get like 2 in the chapter she joins in. So you can promote some people. Sita's been trained. You're getting Katria and Pala in chapter 14. So you have more options for flyers by that point. So that kind of utility isn't very big at that point. And Medea also doesn't really have the stats to be outstanding in any way. All she really has going for her is high lance rank, which is useful for something like the Rider's Bane. But again, it's kind of diminishing returns because you already have like a couple. Like if you have a group of 4 Cavaliers, you already have the means to kill them all with the Rider's Bane. You can do like base level Harden, a trained Abel, maybe even a trained Kane if you've been using them all along. Sita can do it. Jagan can do it. So there's just not much of a reason to use Medea for anything you don't have already. But she can do these things and that has some value, but not a whole lot. So again, I think she goes in like the D tier of like units that are situationally useful, but generally are not. How about we put her next to Astram just for novelty's sake? Sure, let's go with that. I might have underrated her a little bit. but this is where I'm going to put her for now, just chilling here. Then we have Roger from Shadow Dragon. I think the biggest, coolest thing about Armor Knights and Shadow Dragon, I think I've talked about this with Drog before, is they have really high personal speed bases. So when he's in his normal class, of course, Roger's absolute trash. I mean, I think he has like D lances and then nothing else really going for him. But he has like a pretty good speed base. So if you turn him to something like a Hunter or a Myrmidon, or actually Mercenaries, what he goes into, or like Dark Mage if you want to be weird, he has surprisingly high speed, just like Drog, because in order for him to have as much speed as he does as an Armor Knight, he needs to have a high personal base. So he just turns into something else completely. I think that's the best thing to do for him, is turning him to something else. I remember another funny anecdote with Roger that has to do with the speed base is General Horus actually used Roger in like a 0% growth, no warp Shadow Dragon LTC, and he used Roger for one specific general. It's that one chapter, I think the name is like, I forgot what the boss's name is, but he's like a paladin, and in order to get to him, you have to get like through a bunch of generals. It's a chapter after you get Hamurn, I think. It's a chapter after the Kamut chapter, I do believe. And you have to get through like a really big formation in the middle of like generals and paladins. All these generals have brave lances, and pretty much every one of his units die in one round because it was 0% growth. So everyone would just get two-shot. And if they didn't get two-shot, they were like generals that were getting quadded. So no matter what you tried, he just gets fucked up. Not Roger though. He has a high speed base, as I said, so if you promote him to general, he actually survived that, like, doubling, because he wasn't getting quadrupled and his defense was high. That was all he did the whole playthrough, but that was like super glorious. I love that, because he trained Roger to level 10 only for that moment and nothing else. That was great. If you don't know, General Horus is a low turn count player, an LTCer. He doesn't upload generally anymore, but he does like lurk around a couple times, and he has like good insights and everything. So yeah, that's my knowledge of Roger in a nutshell. I've never used him full-time personally. I know he can become okay, but the problem with reclassing a unit like him to something else is he has to deal with E-rank weapon ranks. So, and of course, his stats are not the greatest, but you can get around that sort of. Like, trying to be optimistic here, but generally, yeah, D-tier unit, but with a novelty of a high speed base and reasonably high growth, I do believe. So, into D-tier you go. I do think it's less useful than the pre-promotes by a fair amount. We're putting him like around Forsyth level, Gordon level. I think he's worse than Gordon. I think Gordon's early utility weighs out, or wins out overall. I do think Roger's funny though. Then we have Lena. I put Lena in the top 50 most useful units of all time, and this is one unit I'm thinking of dropping out of it. So I praised Lena for her access to warp, which is busted in Shadow Dragon. Infinite range, you have 7 uses of it at the start, you get a hammer and staff later on, well, very later on, and in the meantime you get like 3 more warp staves, I think 4 if you play 12x. Most people don't, but it exists. And you just skip chapters if you want to. You can, and also even if you don't want to skip chapters, it gives you like really high mobility on your units whenever you want it. You can warp someone on a fort to prevent reinforcements. You can warp someone to like morph to a village, have Marth skip like a bunch of content to just seize the throne instead of walking through a bunch of dangerous enemies. Anything you want to do, warp can help with it. It can move units out of place. This game doesn't have rescuing, so being able to move units around period is super nice. There's no rescue or rescue staff or anything like that. So that stuff is super useful. The issue is she's not the only person who can use warp. She is early on. She joins with C staves, warp is C. But Jagan, for example, I know it sounds silly, but you can turn Jagan into bishop and spam a bit of healing. I think he has like D staves if he's the bishop. Might be close to it, but he can get to warp. Wendell joins with enough staff rank to where if you turn him to bishop, you only need to heal a couple times and he gets warp as well. But the thing, like, I heard this before, the thing about this is like Lena is like, to warp skip a chapter you need 2 warpers, right? And Lena can be one of them. And then you're probably not going to have a second one until Wendell hits warp, and you're not going to have a third one until Boa hits warp, or you invest into Jagan. So if you do that, it kind of depends like who you invest into. But I think in general, I still think Lena is going to be like a useful warper. Even if you're planning to get other people to warp, I think she can still be useful. But in the early game where you don't have another warper, you probably won't be warp skipping because you need the XP. You need to get like C-dat to level 10 at the very least to be able to promote and kill bosses better. So it could be argued that warp is at least useful when Lena's the only warper you have, and by the time it gets more useful, you have other people too. But I still think there's a good case to be made that you want multiple warpers to warp skip chapters if you're playing very efficiently. If you're like LTCing or speedrunning or just skipping chapters, having multiple is good. But it might not be top 15 good, and I can see that argument definitely. Other than that, Healing utility is nice. Fortify can be very useful. I believe she's the only one who can use Hammer in that game, so that alone is pretty useful, even if you're not using her for Warp anymore. Being able to repair things is super nice. It kind of gets eclipsed by the Starlight Sphere, the Star Sphere, for a little bit, but having Hammer is still super nice. Prevent things from being broken, so you can keep using them, keep trading them around, maybe not have the Star Sphere units anymore. Repairing Forges is super nice. So that kind of utility is still good, but I might not keep her in the top 15. I still want to put her in like S+ for all the other things she does. But maybe we should have her a little bit lower. Trying to think exactly where she would go, because last time I think I had her... I don't think Safi's here yet from FE5. We got Tina here, but I don't see Safi. I think she's below Sida, that's for sure, at this point. Yeah, not as essential as these guys, I think. I'm gonna put her around here for now, I think. I think this is the right place for her, just based on gut feeling. Alright, FE12 time, and now we have Leiden. I want to say this is Leiden. I keep forgetting who he is, I'm sorry. There's a little bit of time between. I'm gonna double check. Okay, so it is Leiden, and I used to not think of much of Leiden. I think he's a big filler in a game full of fillers, but Danan's playthrough of FE12 0% grows made me kind of rethink him a little bit, and also my own playthrough of FE12 with the wheel spinning and everything. He's actually sort of a nice filler without much investments. Being able to use Dragon Pikes at base level during a time where you're facing a bunch of dragons on Anri's way, that's actually kind of nice, and you can promote him right away if you want to, if you have the Master Seals for him. Make him like a Draco Knight and just start spamming Dragon Pike that are forged, and that's pretty useful by itself. Sure, he's not the only one who can do it, but the demand is pretty big and his bases are good. His speed in particular like really impressed me. He joins with like 2 other people that I also find hard to differentiate for him. You got like Belf, Leiden, and Robert. Robert is pretty bad, even as a Bow Knight. How do we have 2 bad Robert that are Bow Knights? But Belf was pretty cool too. He has like similar things, so I should probably put him in the same place. I don't remember many distinctions between them, but I just remember Lance rank being super nice. So honestly, I'm inclined to just put him in C tier. Not super high in it, but somewhere where I think he's like decent. Of course, like long term, like just about anyone can be good in FE12 long term because the growths in that game are so insane. And I don't believe his growths are particularly bad, so... Dozla seems like kind of a unit you can compare to him. Yeah, I'm okay with that. Maybe a little bit higher. Isadora, also someone I could like sort of compare him to. I'm gonna stick to this for now, but I could see him being higher, honestly. I don't think he's bad. Not like waifu worthy, because no one in FE12 is waifu worthy almost. It's like a game no one has played, so it's kind of hard to get overrated or underrated units in there, but he seems pretty solid. He might be above some other FE12 unit that I shouldn't have put him above, though. I should probably double check that at some point. And then we have FE12 Aaron himself. I believe I talked about him a lot earlier for FE3 Aaron. FE12 Aaron, I really like him on Lunatic mode in particular. Being able to reclass him to General and just tank a bunch of things, or turn him into Draco Knight. Pretty hard to get Lady Sword if you don't use him. Because, you know, he can just fly over the forest, kill a thief that's running over with Lady Sword, and just get it like that. Even though he's pre-promoted in FE12 as a Jagan, he has like so much trouble with lunatic enemies. On normal mode, he just destroys everything basically. He's super strong, especially early on, especially if you give him a Rainbow Potion. His main Achilles heel is his speed, of course. Doubling is pretty hard. Sometimes he's gonna get double, but not a whole lot depending on what you put him up against. I think generally he's gonna be fine. I do remember, like, once you get Sirius, a lot of people are like, okay, we should just replace Aaron with Sirius, but you should really just use both if you want to use good units, because he's still going to be better than someone like Rhodey or some other scrub, like, I don't know, Julian at fighting, Board, Cords, people like that. He's going to be better than those, so there's no reason to ditch him just because you got another Paladin, especially in a game where you can reclass everyone so freely. And him being in the mill class set is going to help him a lot in, like, New Game Plus playthroughs, because then you can just reclass him to anything ever. He does fall off in the long term. Like, there's going to be a point where you don't want to deploy him anymore. Other people are going to join. Someone like Leiden, for example, does pretty much everything you want Aaron to do at the point he joins, but with better stats, because his bases are just better, his growths are just better, and the lance rank is high enough to where you can use most of the lances you want him to, like the Dragon Pike or the Silver Lance. So there's no real long game for Aaron, I feel like. I don't know what the earliest chapter is you want to ditch him if you were playing FE12. Depends on difficulty. My guess is around, let's see, chapter 7 I think is when you still want like a bunch of Draco Knights, and having a promoted one might be nice. But you also get like 1 or 2 Master Seals at this point, depending on whether you've been to the secret shop and stuff. So it might still be useful there. I think you can still one-hit KO Thieves at base level on Lunatic. Might be like a Rainbow Potion, maybe a Strength proc. I want to say it can still be useful there. But somewhere after those chapters, I think is when you want to ditch Aaron. But the early chapters, he's super nice. I wouldn't say he's as good as like FE6 Marcus. I wouldn't go that far, because I think Marcus stands out a little bit more compared to everyone else you have around him. But I would still put him up pretty high just for the early game. And early game Lunatic is especially tough. Lower difficulties, not as necessary. Someone like Marth can one round on normal mode in FE12, for example. So he's much less useful compared to normally there. But he does carry you in Lunatic. So based on just Lunatic utility, honestly, I think he's overall worse than Luke, because Luke is so good long term, and Luke has like a prologue and everything as extra utility. But I don't hate putting him in the same tier as Luke, so I just want to make the A- tier like nice and round, so I'm just going to put him at the bottom of A for now. I could see an argument for him being higher depending on necessity. My experience with Lunatic is very limited right now. I've only gotten to like chapter 7 or so. So if anything, I would overrate him here, but I think everyone who's played Lunatic was going to agree that like he's still very, very good. But he just like, I feel like Aaron long term is less useful than Marcus in long term in FE6. Knowing that Marcus falls off, I still think he's better, because Marcus basically lasts until the Western Isles for utility. Just through like chipping people is pretty useful for him, but you don't want to like deploy Aaron. Like Marcus is still going to be like one of your better units to deploy in the Western Isles, and even beyond that. But Aaron, I'm not really seeing it beyond chapter 8, 9, 10 or so. Yeah, that is all the units for now. My to be done is completely empty. Next time we're going to continue with Awakening, Fates, 3 Houses, Echoes, that kind of squad. Until then, I will see you then next time. Thanks everyone who submitted characters, and if you want to join Patreon, feel free. If not, feel free not to. Thanks a lot. Either way, peace out, goodbye, and thanks for watching.